To an evening with the incomparable Mae West as we continue a week-long series of her films. Tonight is 1936's Go West, Young Man. Pun intended, I'm sure. A well-known play by Lawrence Riley called Personal Appearance is the basis of the screenplay, personally adapted by and credited to Miss West herself, of course. And after the film, we'll have three guests. By a long-distance telephone from upstate Connecticut, where he is appearing in stock, one of Miss West's many suitors in the film, Lyle Talbot, whom you'll see as the politician William X. Harrison early in the movie. And then writers George Eells and Stanley Musgrove, whose current biography of Mae West is a bestseller, including, as it does, lots of material you've never heard about her before. So be sure to stay tuned after we see Go West, Young Man. Go West, Young Man. And our in-studio guests are two gentlemen who probably know more about the off-screen Mae West than any other persons alive, the authors of her biography, which in the few months it's been out has been tremendously popular, and rightly so. First, public relations expert Stanley Musgrove, whose clients have included Ruth Gordon and George Cukor and everyone from Dmitri Tiomkin to Mae West herself. And the celebrated biographer of such luminaries as Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons, and collaborator on life stories of Ethel Merman and jazz singer Anita O'Day, strong ladies all, George Eells. Gentlemen, I have to tell you sincerely, the book is a real winner. I couldn't put it down. I keep picking up little bits and pieces and then looking in the index for people and saying, I wonder what they say about her, and then I'm going to have to really stop and go, front to back sometime. I must ask, which of you gentlemen came up with the idea of doing the biography?
Well, Stanley met her and became friendly with her, and he started telling me all these hilarious anecdotes. And so I said, start writing them down. And then I even gave him a tape recorder so he could tape record the telephone calls, but he was too legitimate to do that. The
telephone calls, now that would lead me to believe that since you were her publicist, Stanley, did she call you occasionally or quite often? Or?
Yes, she was very busy on the phone.
And often late at night.
Oh, yes, like 2 in the morning when she really began to get good ideas. And well, I guess I wasn't all that ethical. I just was too sleepy to tape record anything.
Well, when did you actually start working on the book?
Well, I finished Ginger Loretta and Irene Who, and the editor said, now your next book should be Mae West. And I said, no, I can't do it. It belongs to Stanley. And so he wrote to Stanley, and Stanley said he didn't want to do a book alone. And so then I said, well, why don't you write and ask him whether we can collaborate? And so that was about 5 years ago.
Now, yes, go ahead.
I worked on High Times, Hard Times, the Anita O'Day book at the same time. But I started doing the basic research and contacting people that had been with her in vaudeville and all that kind of thing. And so that, as a matter of fact, I began to ask her such obscure questions that she began to suspect that I was doing a book, and she had Paul Novak, her companion for 27 years, say to Stanley, is George writing a book on Mae West? And Stanley very cleverly said, George doesn't write books unless he has a contract. And that satisfied everyone.
Very good.
Although Paul then later said that she said, well, I don't think we had better talk to him anymore. And he reassured her and said, if they do the book, it'll be a fair one.
Well, you have a great many unpublished anecdotes, and of course I have her book that came out in the 50s, Goodness Had Nothing to Do with It, which has a great many references as far as people is concerned to the ones you have, but yours stories are a lot deeper than hers. Those the references you made to going back to her vaudeville days, for instance, that brings to mind the rumors about her that for years people, well, either that she was a very frigid lady and all this was a facade, that she was a nymphomaniac, which of course would be just the opposite of that, or that she was somewhere in between, or even that she was not a lady at all, that she was a gentleman wearing a wig and the clothes and just, enjoyed walking up and down in ladies' clothing and, doing all these outrageous things. Well, that pretty well, your research into those days pretty well put the kibosh on all those rumors.
Well, yes, people should have known that she was no female impersonator because she'd been arrested for her play Sex in 1926, IR 7, and she was in jail, and she was thoroughly examined, so that if she had been a female impersonator, we would have known it very early.
Well, of course, in those days, we didn't have Bernstein and Woodward to tell us everything that's going on about him, but we might not have believed it anyway.
But also, people believed that she was the first transsexual.
Oh, yes.
And then someone, after the book came out, said to me, you know that she died shortly after she came to Hollywood, and her brother impersonated her. Well, her brother had a big belly and this beard.
Well, Stanley, the thing that contemporary people know about Mae West is mainly after a very successful honor night at USC. Can you tell the viewers, in case they don't know about it, how that happened and how it brought her back into the public eye?
Well, that all actually happened through Hedda Hopper. I had dinner with Hedda Hopper one night. She said, I've got to watch Mae West and Mr. Ed, and so before dinner. So I hadn't heard anything of Mae West in ages, and that interested me. So I was involved with these cinema dinners that were being put on at USC, and so we got her down there for a couple of them, and people were so taken with it that we decided then to honor her one evening, and it just took the roof off the place, and all the press was there, and it started everything again. I mean, the press would not stop. It went on and on. A television special deal was made at Universal, and then, of course, Life magazine came out with a cover, Mae West at 75.
That's right, I remember that cover.
Right, and then Fox signed
Myra
her.
Breckenridge.
She hadn't done a film in 27 years, and she got $350,000 for it. And
Her billing wasn't bad either, as I remember.
First star billing.
Yes. How did that sit with Raquel Welch?
Not so hot.
Incidentally, the Mr. Ed references reminds me that we are going to be showing that Mr. Ed episode on Thursday, following the Thursday night presentation, which I think is Belle of the 90s, but I could be wrong on that. But I know that Thursday night we'll be having the Mr. Ed one that you referred to, so I know our viewers will want to know that.
You know,
yes.
Not to interrupt, but...
Go ahead.
With Mr. Ed, that was the one where she looked, I think, the worst that she ever looked on the screen. And I never could figure out what the reason was.
And what was it?
And it wasn't until after she died that we found out that that was when she had contracted diabetes.
No kidding.
But she would not admit to this because sex personalities don't have that kind of a disease.
I understand. Well, gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break now because we have a third guest tonight. And I've just been informed that we have on the telephone a gentleman whom you interviewed for your book and who we just a few months ago in this very studio had as a guest on our Ozzie and Harriet Christmas special, and also who was in our film tonight playing William X. Harrison, one of Mae West's many suitors, before she moved out into the boondocks in her touring car. I refer, of course, to one of the busiest actors in our town and in our country, in fact, the very versatile Lyle Talbot. Lyle Talbot, whose Hollywood career spans 5 decades and hundreds of films, at least 2 TV series that we all fondly remember, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet for 11 years, and another 5 years on The Bob Cummings Show, is currently doing his thing out in stock, and we'll get the details from him a bit later. But, Lyle, where are you anyway?
Well, I'm in Milford, New Hampshire. Beautiful New Hampshire, Tom.
Upstate, I gather.
Yes, that's right.
Well, I will ask you about what your vehicle is a little bit, but we'd like to talk about the vehicle we've just been watching. Of course, we've just seen Go West, Young Man, which you made with Miss West in 1936. But, well, now, your scene on the balcony where Warren William had called all the reporters and the press people around, she seemed to be muttering to you under her breath even more than usual.
Well, exactly. What had happened was I had told her while it was set up, it was going to be a long dolly shot, and the camera was going to move in on us. And I told her about this incident. She wouldn't believe me. You know, she said, oh, come on, you're not afraid of me now, are you? And I said, certainly not, Miss West. I've been around a bit. And so she started talking the way she always talked. Oh, you know, and she said, incidentally, this dialogue we've got here doesn't mean anything. Let's you and I just look each other over a bit and size each other up and just mumble a thing. The sound man says, I can't understand what she's saying. She said, to hell with her, roll 'em, Henry.
Lyle, it's been just a joy to talk to you, and we certainly have admired you, you know, many, many years, and we'll be looking for you when you get back to town.
Bless you, Tom. It's always fine to talk to you, and I'll tell you, your station, which does these wonderful things. I'm, you know, my good old friend Gene Autry.
Right. I thank you very much, Lyle.
Bye-bye, Tom.
Good night. Lyle Talbot out on the road, doing his duty and having a wonderful time. I hope at his age, and he's got to be in the 70s there, I'm as happy and enthusiastic about the business as he is. He mentioned Henry Hathaway, the director, and not the problems, but the fact that Mr. Hathaway, a strong man himself, was able to pretty well control Miss West. Of course, who couldn't, but I mean, who could not... what I'm trying to say is she could control anybody, apparently. Are there anecdotes in your book about that?
Yes, Henry I said to him, you know, you were noted for being a very strong director, but in this picture, everybody has said that you weren't very strong. And he said, well, he said, when I was assigned the picture, he said, I was supposed to do Pennies from Heaven, and then I was given this picture instead. And he said, when I took it, I said, the secret of a Mae West picture is that if you like Mae West, she's everything. She's wonderful. But if you don't like her, the picture's no damn good.
That's right.
And so he said, I didn't try to do very much. He said, I did, in the first scene, have her drive up in a limousine. And the chauffeur got out, and he opened the door, and this English bulldog got out, and it had a rhinestone collar and a rhinestone leash, and she was covered with rhinestones. And he said, as they walked away from the camera, you could see there behind, and he said, she said, out. Nobody gets a laugh in this picture except Mae West. And then he tried several other things, and she would have those taken out. But she knew how to protect herself.
Now, did she, Stanley, when you were, first of all, I'd like you to describe the apartment that we've heard so much about over in the Ravenswood. First of all, it was a very small apartment, I'm told. Why did she keep it all those years, do you suppose?
That was just the nest. That's really where she felt comfortable, and she did her best writing there, her best everything, I believe.
Well, we've heard that, yeah.
I think also that the secret to Mae was that she didn't care that much about money. She didn't care that much about society. But she liked power. And in that situation, she had a wonderful place to control everything. You know,
what was it like? Can you describe it for us?
The apartment, well, it really was claustrophobic. It was done in white and gold and a lot of mirrors. And she had a large bedroom. That was a decent-sized bedroom. And, of course, there was the
famous
mirror.
Mirrored ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the rest of it was, there were tiny rooms.
And did she do a lot of entertaining there, other than the gentleman running in and out? I mean,
No,
did she show films, for instance? Did she show her old films?
Well, somebody would come and bring a projector.
Oh, I see.
And
really? Is that why
show.
she didn't have a screening room or anything like that?
Oh, no. Really, the place was small. And there was no dining room. There was just a little kitchenette thing, a dinette
really?
thing. And well, it was a small place, but it was where she first landed when she came out from New York and started at Paramount.
Minute from Paramount, right?
It's just right there.
Sure.
You could walk it, and she always felt at her best there, and did everything at her best there, I believe.
One thing about it that I thought was very significant were the mirrors. She had a mirror which was like a mirror from a fun house, except not so distorted. But when it was covered with, around the sides, decorated with shells, and then it was shaped so that when she looked at herself, she looked taller and slimmer. And also, the coffee tables had mirror tops, but they didn't have silver backing. They had a gold backing so that she got a glow when she looked in the mirror. It all went in with the narcissism, you know.
Now, tonight's movie was based on a play that starred Gladys George on the stage, and very successfully, too, called Personal Appearance. I mentioned that earlier. And I was kind of surprised to find that when I was looking at the credits, because ordinarily she didn't like to adapt things by other people, did she? I mean, she adapted her own plays, I know.
Yes, someone usually had Mae was a wonderful gag writer, but someone would write the basic kind of framework. And then, as a matter of fact, Alan Rivkin tells that in another movie that he wrote the script, and she called him to her bedroom, and he sat in this chair by her bed, and she went through the thing, and she said, oh, now this scene. She says, now what does that mean? And she went through the whole script, and he explained to her what it meant, and she said, okay, now I'll take it and make it good.
Well, now, come on, you're both writers. Let's be very candid now. The critics, particularly, have lambasted her writing talents while admitting that she certainly knew what to do with what she had and you know, make it terribly successful. But she really wasn't a wonderful writer. Can we say that, do you think, without
she was a gag
lightning
writer.
striking?
No.
Yes.
She thought she was. At USC, the Friends of the Libraries a few years ago had a lunch honoring Tennessee Williams. And Lawrence Harvey, and part of the program, said, I believe you're the greatest American playwright who ever existed. And he sort of giggled, and then he said, oh, well, don't you think Mae West is? And she's got the figure to prove it. Well, Mae West took this very seriously. She said, well, that's right. She said, there was O'Neill, and then me, and then Tennessee. And she said, Tennessee has lifted a lot of my stuff.
She thought everybody... See, the plots were so lurid.
Yes.
And that's why they don't, you know, you can't say she was a wonderful writer, but she was great with a gag. I mean, she's the most quoted woman in the English language.
Yes, and they all were about herself.
Yeah.
Was she as egocentric as she seemed to be, or was it just kind of a defense mechanism, or did she really believe all these things, do you think?
Well, I think she really believed that Mae West was phenomenal, absolutely marvelous, wonderful, but she regarded herself in the third person, so it wasn't offensive when she got going on herself and what she had accomplished. It was as if she was speaking of another person.
Well, Stanley and George, your book, which is called, of course, Mae West, is certainly doing well in the charts, and as I mentioned earlier, it certainly deserves every bit of attention it's gotten because it's wonderful in that you think you've heard everything there is to know about Mae West. If you think you've heard anecdotes tonight, believe me, we haven't even skimmed them because you'll have to buy the book to get them all, or go to the library. We're not selling books, but at any rate, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed reading it, and it certainly is a revelation to those of us who have enjoyed her work. Tomorrow night, as we mentioned earlier, we have Mr. Ed, that episode that was shown that Hedda Hopper had to stay home for a while to see before she went to USC, and then we're also going to be showing Belle of the 90s. And I'll say goodnight now and let you see a brief preview of tomorrow night's film. Good night, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure.